Okay, so good afternoon. I am Anto Budiarjo. Welcome to Monday Live. This is something that we do every Monday afternoon to figure out the future of smart buildings. Great to have you here. In case you're wondering who we are, panelists are listed on mondaylive.org, which is where you registered to be here. So that's great. And just a reminder that the views expressed here are personal, not of any company or organization. Just bear that in mind. Let's make this as interactive as possible. Post questions, comments, and on the Zoom chat. I always say every week, I say especially this week, but I say that every week, so especially all the weeks. So there you go. And this slide deck, in case you want anything from it, is on mondaylive.org as well. So this being January 2024, what we are doing is we are anticipating the summit, the Smarter Summit, which is going to be held on the 21st of January in Chicago. So we're going to be talking about this this week as well as next week in preparation for that. Let's see. To effectively sort of refine the summit and get feedback on what we're doing. So our agenda is like always, and then what we're going to be doing is reviewing the agenda that the group has put together today. Really want to get feedback if the agenda resonates with all of us, and tweak it as necessary. Before that, obviously, Happy New Year from all of us. I think we said a lot of things in December about anticipating this year, so I hope it turns out the way we're all expecting it when we were, across the rest of this year. So looking forward to that. And as always, hand it over to Ken for some news from his world.
Thanks, Anto. A very messy slide, but it kind of looks a lot like my life these days. We're, of course, getting ready for AHR in Chicago. It's coming together really well. Really pleased that I've come as close as I ever have of trying to get as many people in the industry on one page. So we've got over 50 speakers coming out to our session. So a lot of talent, and I do appreciate the support we get from the industry. Also excited about today because we're going to put together the Smarter Summit, and we have a session which is a recap of the Smarter Summit. So we have more than a vested interest in the Smarter Summit, and I think Anto mentioned just before that he's got some other sessions going on that spin out of the Smarter Summit, so he'll tell you about those. I just put a kind of a fun article together. I'm called The Metamorphosing in the AI Cloud Native Era. I see we're moving into a whole new era, and I've been around long enough to see a lot of these eras come and go. So it's kind of fun, but I think what the point I'm trying to make is that you're going to have to significantly come into this new era. I found out too, is if you're a worm, you can never be a caterpillar. You can never be a butterfly. You actually have to be a caterpillar to be a butterfly. So we all got to be caterpillars and turn into butterflies. And I think that it's not a bad analogy, because we've always kind of been crawling around in the dark in these mechanical rooms and keeping our industry very out of the limelight. And I think as soon as we touch the AI and cloud native era, we're going to be very visible. And so it's interesting. We have to reposition ourselves and actually just be very metamorphic. And that message carries through to our Let's Do More in 2024. And we're also seeing that there's a big opportunity to reach out to the people beyond our industry, people younger than us, to basically get mentorships. Very, very big on that. The last comment at the bottom there is, this came out of our Wednesday meeting. We're talking about this. This is exciting news for me that Lawnmark is putting together, they're collaborating with C4SB, Open ADR, and the Monday Live team. And they tell you a little bit of words there of what we're going to be doing. We need to best decide how we carry this message to the industry. I can do it, but it needs, I think, to be done almost by us all. But maybe we can maybe even take just a little bit of discussion time in this meeting to figure out how we best sell the collaboration for innovation. Back to you, Anton.
Yeah, you'll see that's actually a significant sort of theme in the agenda, the collaboration and getting everybody. So it'll come up, and please bring it up as we're discussing it. It's great.
Super.
Yeah. So I actually didn't add a slide because I was just busy working on the summit. So just a reminder, there's less than 2 weeks. It's actually 2 weeks yesterday to the summit. So if you haven't registered, please do. I've just put the link to register on the chat. It's obviously free, so head over there and register now or later. Rick, do you want to add anything to this? Just talking about the summit.
No, that's just not much to add, but that hasn't already been said. The agenda's coming together great. It's less than 2 weeks away, and we're going to be talking about the content starting like right now. So
Starting in a couple of minutes.
Couple of minutes.
Okay. All right. So as always, the various links it's available to you. And before we jump into the agenda, any other news or thoughts anybody want to bring up? Open it up. Hearing nothing, we shall proceed. Thanks. So what we have done is we've created this document as a Google Doc that we, meaning the organizers of the summit, Monday Live and C4SB, have been working sort of collaboratively to figure out the specifics of the agenda. The agenda is split into 6 sessions. These are kind of what they are. 3:30. In fact, I'm going to do this. This doesn't seem to work. Anyway, there's a keynote, there's a vision, and then it goes into a session at 3:30, 4 o'clock, etc., all the way up to 5:30, and then we end at 6 o'clock when the beer starts to flow. So what we want to do is we want to spend about 5 minutes each on each of these sessions. So the first one is the vision towards cloud native. And the thinking behind this is that this is really where we need to start the conversation at the summit. It is essentially the conversation that we in this group on Monday Live have been talking about quite significantly in the last 6 months or thereabouts. The way we're thinking about the flow of this is how we got here, a little bit of a recap in terms of what started all of this, what started Monday Live, what started C4SB, without going into any detail. They may well be individuals at the summit that all of this is new. So we kind of wanted to start there. And then we want to jump into a recap of Atlanta. So I'm going to ask Rick to speak about what the learning from that is.
Yeah, the recap of how we got here with Kennedy being on stage and Anto and myself and Glenn, it'll be kind of an interesting sort of timeline and reminder. But and then the recap of Atlanta would be that we went into Atlanta wanting confirmation and feedback relative to, are we on the right track relative to overcoming certain barriers that were holding back the industry. And at Atlanta, there were those multiple different sessions, and I think we all know what they were. We'll probably go through them quickly at this session. And we got feedback, and we got continued like reinforcement of like, yeah, these efforts are on the right page, and if we all work together as a community, focusing on interoperability, we will be able to blow open this innovation cycle. Now, at Atlanta, I'm not sure we knew that cloud native computing foundation and Kubernetes and containers were going to be such the core of what we were doing. But what a gift those technologies were to the efforts of when we brought the community together to look for ways to accomplish interoperability. So that's a little bit about what we'll do in that part of the session.
Yeah, and then not sure how much time we'll have to spend on this on cloud native, and would like to get the sort of thoughts of the group about how to talk about cloud native or how to present cloud native at the summit. Anybody have any thoughts? Other than explaining what it is, maybe that will be a good start.
Yeah, we're also going to have well, when does Carly appear on that? Because that might actually be a good portion for.
That'll be in the ecosystem session.
That's right.
4:30 here.
Well, I think there are multiple financial advantages to owners and operations folks and asset managers. So the value story of moving to cloud native should definitely be a part of that. In addition to explaining what it is, I would think.
Yeah. The way I've always sort of seen that is that's where the building owners are. Their IT systems are basically in the cloud, right? So this approach actually allows us to take our stuff to them in a manner that they are familiar with. Does that resonate with people?
Well, with the reminder that the reason that they went to cloud native for their other systems is because it gives them a 5-to-1, increase in efficiency, or 3-to-1, increase in competitiveness with other older systems. So I think that makes sense to point out. Absolutely.
And the other portion of it too is supporting more assets with a lower headcount, which is the direction everything's going.
Efficiency of operation.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, this section needs to say what it is and why it's important. So I got to answer what and why. That's the key point about the vision, and but also some picture of what it looks like. When this gets implemented, this is what how it's going to feel or be experienced by users and an entire supply chain.
Yeah, we probably.
Sorry, back to the definition of some of this stuff. We do have some resource was written by Brian Collins, and I think Anto and Brian have worked together, and he's got a great series of articles there, which I've actually just put the link in chat. Anyway, that linking to some of those resources, one of them is what is cloud native, and it also goes into the IBB. And so anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So this leads us straight to the next bullet here, which is cloud native represents change that has more value, and it's closer to our collective clients, right? So how do we view this as either a disruption or an opportunity? Obviously depends on you who you are, but we thought that we'd have a sort of discussion on that a little bit, and would love to get everybody's thoughts. Are we in the middle of disruption? In which case, what are the opportunities, or is it one or the other, et cetera, et cetera? Thoughts?
Are you talking about as it pertains specifically to cloud native or a little bit more broad?
I think cloud native. I mean, the summit is actually don't have it on this document. The tagline of the summit is realizing cloud native building. So moving towards cloud native building. So cloud native is kind of at the center concept. So I would say the answer to your question is most likely yes, although there's probably other things, because it's not just the technology of cloud native, as others have said. It's kind of the business implications thereof.
So let me tell you what I was thinking. When I think of disruption in our industry, the things that come to mind are something more like AI, for instance, I would say is a disrupting factor. But AI is part of what both enables and takes advantage of cloud native also, right? So from that standpoint, you know, it's all in the same train driving us towards cloud native, right?
Yes. And that comment it just occurred to me that we haven't mentioned AI in this conversation. So there's probably an argument of saying that there's an AI here somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll just put it there as a placeholder. These are notes.
AI is a major benefactor, if I could state it this way, from cloud native and
Right.
this open interoperable kind of mentality, right? That's when AI gets orders of magnitude more capable and beneficial in our industry, is when we have that openness and access to all the data that we kind of envision in this whole thing.
I think with regard to disruption or opportunity, you could argue that most of the new IoT entrants in the past 5 years have come into the market using cloud native architectures. So in that sense, they're disrupting the industry, because the existing architectures are much more conventional client server type architectures, right? That being said, you know, a number of the building automation companies are trying to move in this direction of enabling more and more of their functionality in the cloud. But yeah, it is because the entire IT industry has shifted from client server to cloud native architectures. And it's just a question of when is our industry as a whole going to complete that transition? And because in a sense they don't have a choice, but the other aspect of it is the opportunity, how best to do it, right? And it's just to say you have it or you do it or you comply, what the hell does that mean to a building owner, right? So I think the opportunity discussion is answering the question again, why is this valuable to me as a building owner, and how should it show up in practice?
Yeah, and
Well,
in a way, go ahead. What is it?
No, I don't want to interrupt. You finish on time.
No, you go.
Well, I just think the concept of cloud native and the question on the table, disruption or opportunity, really begs the question, to whom? And if we're talking about the owner of the property and we think about what might be going on in the use case to the property owner, there are some definite benefits to a cloud native solution, given lots of different disruption as well as opportunity that they're experiencing. One of them may be the ability to find people to assist them, whether it's, not just from their own workforce standpoint, but to find the right contractors, the right support help, the right solutions. But I think we should kind of think about why cloud native is a good solution from the owner's point of view, as part of the discussion.
I added a bullet under our session that we're down below that talks a little bit about who the stakeholders are and what are the benefits to the stakeholders and how does it benefit the stakeholders. So we could certainly introduce it in this part of it, general, broad strokes, and then maybe we can discuss it in more detail in our section.
I think that's
Yeah,
a great idea.
Yeah, and that was actually the comment I was going to make, is this is just the opening, right? This is just to set the scene. But many of these things are in many ways asking questions that later sessions are either resolving or answering or discussing further. So this is just framing the conversation.
Well, I think from a framing standpoint, whenever we use the word vision, it implies an underlying strategy and alignment within it in order to establish momentum towards that vision. And I think Tracy's comment is useful to at least kind of describe the vision for whom, from the standpoint of cloud native, and the rest of the sessions can contribute towards how various different things are aligning to achieve that vision.
And that leads us very nicely to the last bullet point of this session, is that this is, and this goes, I think, back to some of the comments that Ken has made, right? This is not a solo sport. It's a team sport, right? And it can't be done by any individual or company alone. Just sort of set that up. And I think that becomes a theme throughout the session, is that this is about collaboration in action.
Great.
Art, the point that Melissa made about the thinking about it from the owner standpoint, and what's good for owners, hey, is usually pretty good for vendors as well. It's funny how that works. But talking about it from the owner's standpoint makes a lot of sense. But this collaborative effort part is that owners are, so we got to figure out how to say it from an owner standpoint. They are actually asking for solutions from vendors who are willing to work together, so that we don't have some people don't care. Some people are fine with just single vendor solutions, but a lot of owners are asking for multi-vendor solutions because they like best in class components and they like them to work together. So as an industry, we should be conscious of that, and that's part of what we're trying to give a framework for. Here I am again stating the obvious.
Well, but there's an important factor in what you're saying too, which is there's an initial choice or determining factor that an owner will have to make or deal with, right? If it's a new construction, they will make a conscious decision to go open or go with this more of a single vendor, single throat to choke kind of an approach, right? And I would say, without any backing data, that there are going to be strong believers in both camps, right? We might think, oh, of course owners are going to say open, but I'm not so sure that's the case. And then, go ahead.
No, I was just going to agree with you, Tracy, support your comment.
Yeah. And then the second part, if it's an existing portfolio of buildings, they are already dealing with a whole set of proprietary platforms and solutions and architecture. So then it's a different kind of a decision. Do I bring all this together into something that is sharing or continue down the path that I have been, right? But there is this monumental initial commitment to one direction or the other that has to occur.
So
And
we
just want to, and that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is to give them confidence and give them evidence of the fact that the open route is
An option.
It's an option, and the path is being paved.
Yeah.
So moving on, we're running slow behind our schedule here. The next session is on specifying and procuring smarter buildings. Rick and I and Jim Lee, who's unable to be here, and Pete had a call about this, and this is essentially the points that we thought would be good to present here. Refresher on the smarter stack, because that's obviously is the tool we use to start thinking about everything else. An update to Div 2525. In Atlanta, we released version 1.0, and in Chicago, we'll be releasing 1.1. And so Pete likely will provide brief sort of updates as to what's different. So those are kind of the clearly sort of informational part of this presentation, of this session. Then the sort of the discussion is kind of similar to disruption and opportunity. It's kind of like what this is something that we've been talking about for last 2-3 years. CapEx versus OpEx, and then this whole notion that make sure you buy stuff that works in interoperable ways, and then there's this concept that moving towards a SaaS model. Is there a model here that we need to think about at this point, like a sort of building as a service kind of a thing? So I thought I'd just read all the bullets and just open up the conversation with the group. Anybody feel strongly one way or the other? What does buy stuff?
I'll start again. I mean, the motivation here at the end of the day with the organizations I know that are doing this work and investing in it, like Quadrille and Hines, they see a path to supporting their assets in a more efficient way, and also getting the data out of their assets that they need for the SEC and California and ESG reporting requirements. So the more standardized the buildings can be, the lower costs they can have and the higher NOI they can have. So specifying and procuring smarter buildings has always been a challenge, but I think the business case for doing it is really becoming apparent to a few larger portfolio holders who are leading the charge.
David, I think you bring a really good point, where the procurement and reporting side of things intersect. Would there be value, or any thoughts from the team on the extent that some commentary or document that we can point towards of how open and secure are not separate topics, that you can have secure and open cloud native? Is that something that should fit in the bullets of procuring smarter buildings in this way?
Open and secure
Yep.
is not an oxymoron.
Correct. I think, I'm very capable of arguing with myself. I can argue both camps because I've had to procure both ways. And I just think that is one of the elements in that discussion. And there are many people that believe it's mutually exclusive. And from a procurement standpoint, I do think that it could be useful for us to have some commentary on that topic.
Okay, I don't think oxymoron is the right word for this, but we'll let it pass.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I know. I'll too many words. I'll type it later. These are just notes. Tristan, did you want to say something? Do you want to jump on? I'll just bring him on. I think he wants to do that. You're muted, Tristan. Do you want to chime in with something?
Sorry. I was thinking that the regulations that David was talking about, do we have a place in one of the sessions where we talk about the drivers so that people who aren't familiar with them as much as others can see all of the drivers?
Good question. So,
Right.
okay, well, let's answer that question when we get to the bottom, and then we can figure out where it should be. It would be best fit. Thank you. That's great. Great point, Tristan. Thank you. All right. So moving on to the next session, which is a presentation on the IBB, and essentially the flow that we're thinking is a very brief introduction to it, why it's needed, what it is, and where does it go, and who's doing what. It's very brief. And then an introduction to the IBB zone, which is the cloud management platform that would manage IBBs, and actually showing that. And then basically the whole intent of this demo of an IBB is to show how work is like using the IBB. And what we intend to do is to install an app, install another app that automatically connects to that first app, then install additional apps, and then do things like demonstrating how the cloud native sort of flexibility, being able to have an app in different places, can actually work, and actually showing that. And to do all of that in 30 minutes. That's kind of the thought. And this will be done live, and I would have been praying to the demo gods in the morning. But that's the intent. Does that resonate with folks?
Yeah. I mean, Andrew, just as long as you understand that the entire Smarter Summit depends on this demo. I mean, you don't pull it off, we're in big world of hurt.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you all to pray to the demo gods.
Well, a key part of what we're doing with the demo isn't to say that we can turn something on or turn something off or change a set point. It's to demo the fact that the code for this new way of doing all those normal things, the code and the processes for implementing the code has been done. It's not, oh, this has not been a whiteboard exercise. This is actual, this is a path that's been cleared and is ready for more folks to join. So in some ways you could just bring up a screen and show all the lines of code and say, see, that's the demo.
We can do that if demo gods doesn't help us, then we'll do that. Sorry, Ken.
That's the fallback strategy.
Ken.
Okay, the point I wanted to make is what we've been doing in our sessions is we've been coming up with this second page, and we've been providing some resources and connection to the people who are speaking. And I think that's useful because what it allows people to do, if they're even, if they're still deciding whether they want to come out to the summit, they can actually get an inkling because they may not know what IBB is, but we do have some resources that we can link to tell them that. And so I think, just having that flyout page, that if I look at it, what the heck is this all about? I can actually see the people that are speaking and see some of the resources they have. We've actually included videos and all kinds of things in the cloud native thing. So I would suggest that you take a look at that because I think we have the ability to do that easily, and ever how that plays out, I think it's useful.
So could you help us do that on your site? Put that together.
If you can get the information to us.
We are
Basically, it's pretty easy for us to drop it in. The site And in fact, you can do it yourself. You know, like, I mean, as an editor, you can actually create that page. You know,
Right.
and so both Atto and C4SB are editors. So we have that capability, and that's how we've been doing that. Mark as well. So what I'm sort of saying is, what we're trying to do in our sessions is we're trying to create a link that not only is this a talking piece and an important summit, people are going to come to it, and it's that moment thing, and it's a great thing. Everybody's going to go away, they're going to be really pleased with it. You're going to video it. I heard you say you're going to pay to have it videoed, so you're putting that into it. In addition to video, you need resource. You need, ultimately, if you actually hook somebody and they start reading all of this stuff, they want to know more, and they want to know who has that information, which of the heads on the Zoom call here can speak to that best or link off to other resources. So I think we're trying to create a whole thing. And the other thing is the PowerPoint that used to appear in the middle of one of these presentations is now turned into dynamic data. And basically, it's so easy to produce videos. People are actually quick videos. We look at them. I used to hate them because they took more time than reading. But now, as we move through them in high speed, jump from here to there, we kind of get the gist of what the guy's talking about. So we can actually get a lot of information in a short time. And yeah, it's just medium's changing.
Yeah, well, we'll find as much resources as we have in terms of time to create those, but time is obviously limited. So let's move on, because time is moving on. And so this is the following session, and the intent here is that this is the demo, and then Tracy will lead a conversation about what an ecosystem would look like given that way of doing things. That's kind of my words. Tracy, do you want to step through these? Some of these are bullets that I added, but some I think is what you added.
Sure. I could use some help expanding on this, actually. When I went back and read it too, I think I missed the meeting where we first came up with this one. But to me, the ecosystem is all about the last bullet point down there that I added about an hour ago, which it is, you know, who are the stakeholders here? Who's who in the zoo, as they say? What are the benefits for each of those players? How do they benefit in that discussion? So we talked about why, what it is, everything leading up to this. Now I think we transition into the more of the business end of things, where we talk about who's providing what aspects of this and who's benefiting and in what ways. Is that a good interpretation of what you had in mind, Anto?
Yeah, I think so. If it works with everybody else, but and Tristan, I'm glad you raised your hand. Can you chime in on this, because your name is listed there?
Yeah, thanks. So, you know, some of this says what's been the experience for vendors. So we at Skycentrics are obviously going to be presenting the open automated demand response app that's been IBB compliant created. And that means that ideally we, Skycentrics and utilities that we work with, could achieve a holy grail that's been around for probably the last 10 years, which is figuring out a way to get demand response cost effectively to commercial buildings, right? It's demand response started with big universities and big aluminum smelting plants and phone calls saying, hey, can you shut down your plant for 4 hours? And it's trying to get to an automagical way where a lot of electric loads can just use more or less energy, more energy when the sun is shining and there's a lot of renewables and the cost is low and it's clean, and please use less energy when the grid is dirty and expensive, which tends to be at the same time. So What's that speaks to the value of the ecosystem. There's going to be utility incentives for being able to get that. There's going to be changes in rate plans. We're working with national laboratories to develop these automagical communication systems. We're working with a lot of OEMs to help them get to this place in a simple way. And for us, the IBB is a perfect method of rapidly getting this to work. If we'd had to do it without the IBB, we would have just needed a lot more time, a lot more heartache.
Thanks, Tristan. And the intent is Ryan is a gentleman that works for IoTech Systems, which is one of the systems that we'll be demoing. So he'll go through a similar experience to what Tristan just said from his perspective. And Tracy also has gone through that, and there'll be other vendors hopefully that could fit in this. Any other thoughts from anyone?
I was wondering about if each one of these turned into like a LinkedIn post that was basically promoting the summit, but kind of had the essence of what you've got on each one of these bullets for each of the subject matters. What it might do is it might create some interest, show sort of the depth of what the summit is about, and it might even encourage somebody to come as they see a topic that's near and dear to them. It's fairly easy to do. I mean, just basically that's your LinkedIn post with a few things going to it. Somebody has to champion it, I guess. But
yeah, no, I would
remind
really
everyone too, one of the things we wanted to do was make sure that we had audience input on some of these things. So we haven't heard from anyone yet.
Yeah, I've been watching the chat. I think people have been absorbing this. So let's go on to the next session, which is so this is, we've set this, we framed it up. We said we're going to figure out how to specify and procure, and this is the sort of a way of doing cloud native. This is kind of the ecosystem that would enable that. Then the next session is really about what does this change mean to the industry, to workforce, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going to hand it over to Melissa and Steve, who's going to be championing this session. Who's going to?
Melissa, you want
Steve, why
to
don't you
start
start
off?
off?
You want me-
Yeah, why don't you start off?
Okay. So Melissa and I we're talking through starting with the title of this session. And I think the point we wanted to make is that workforce, the innovation of the workforce itself is in many respects changing the industry as opposed to the other way around. Okay. And so that's the reason for the word. We had our conversation with the team Wednesday when we were talking about this. And so we reversed the order, and that was very intentional. And it reflects not only the younger generation coming in and recognizing what they're used to seeing in terms of computing environments and computing technologies. It goes beyond that, but it also leads to the 3 points that we have here around the fact that for the better part of 2 years, we continuously talk about the lack of talent in our industry and how hard it is to replace that talent, find it, and replace it. So what's our answer? Yeah, I mean, we can train and train and train, and we can advertise what a great industry we're in, but we can also find ways to need less labor. And cloud native is very much a technology that will lead to that. Okay, so that's the first point, is that let's get on board with this technology because it means more can be done with fewer man hours. Okay, So that's the first point. Second point is that the skills, once you start moving into the cloud, IT skills are essential. And I think Melissa's going to talk to this point better than I, but what's very helpful now is that educational institutions across the United States are responding to this by putting programs together that are training the students to be able to apply these skills into OT-based products. So that's going to be very helpful. And then the final point here is that governments at all levels have decided that our OT systems are mission critical. They're part of critical infrastructure. And so they're requiring that our systems comply with the standards and performance necessitated by that designation. And again, I'll let Melissa build on that point. But that is the reason we're mentioning this is at the end of the day is from businesses, whether you're a manufacturer or you're a systems integrator, why make the investment in all of this? Because this is all going to lead to more and more buildings wanting to be smart. Okay, so this is all about scale. This is all about growing our market, and so cloud native is going to be very much because of the government getting in and saying, "Hey, this stuff needs to work." Then we're going to be able to grow the size of the pool of opportunities, and in large part led by government agencies. And I think this is really critical because, as I may have mentioned in the past, back in the 80s, it was the military that drove the original EMCS industry because they were the one that was specifying that energy management systems needed to go into all these military facilities. And that created a market, which then ultimately led to DDC and where we are today. So to have the government, again, but at a much broader basis, coming in and saying, we want these intelligent systems, and they have to work to this standard, this is great for us.
So a couple of thoughts on how the workforce is changing the industry and how the workforce is innovating. The first is that the composition of our workforce and the size of our workforce is changing. Whether we want to do anything about it, it is changing. And the shrinking workforce is something that has driven technology innovation around workforce. We have seen vendors throughout this industry respond to this, and it's been very valuable. But the second point about the skill sets that are needed to do this, recently I attended a pretty interesting series of sessions in DC talking about the number of jobs that used to be very tactical that did not require IT skills and the percentage of jobs today and in the future that are going to require some form of IT related skill set it is phenomenal. And so when you look at that in our industry is responding. We're stepping up to that, and we're really planting and embedding new skills into our workforce. But on the government agency side, there's kind of an interesting mix. There is the government agency as a workforce consumer, and what they want in the workforce that works on their contracts. We have seen with the Department of Defense instructions for civilian contractors and workers that do contracts in their facilities, as well as buildings that have very secure environments, that there are very specific workforce requirements that are being driven. And that does affect how we train and prepare our workforce. Because if we want these contracts, or if we are an owner of those buildings, we have to make sure that we've got what we need to address that. So those are some of the things that we've seen. Last year, I think it's very worthy to point out that some of the feedback that we got from the audience in the summit was on the topic of how are we bringing people with advanced skills into the industry. And I think that there are a number of different initiatives that have been bringing very senior level, highly skilled people into specific pockets of the industry that is worthy of discussion as well.
Since we're rapidly coming to the top of the hour, I want to, I think this is great, Melissa, Steve, great work. I just want to talk about the last session because it's pretty quick. So this is basically obviously to close off the summit, and the core part of this is action stations. Really want to motivate everybody to get behind this movement. So there'll be a sort of recap of the vision and where we got to, how you can get involved. That obviously will vary depending on who you are, and specifically what people can do at the AHR Expo. The Monday Live and the Coalition will be at the booth here, S6325, which is the Landmark booth. Tracy, do you want to talk about that for a second? It's been turned to collaboration.
So one of the things that Landmark as an organization has been working towards for, gosh, the last 5 years or so is a much more protocol inclusive view of the world. Whereas, you know, anyone who was involved with Landmark, historically, it was all about lawnworks, right? So over the last 5 years, we've been moving steadily towards this world or this vision where there are a lot of protocols and so forth out there. And what's more important, in the overriding common theme of this, is open and interoperable architectures. So one of the ways that we wanted to sort of illustrate and highlight that in the Landmark booth was to invite other organizations in and create a demo that is using some of the latest and greatest technologies and techniques and best practices. And all of these organizations share that same open, interoperable mentality and vision of the world. So we're all coming together in one little booth with a live demo to demonstrate how we can get there, you know, kind of one step at a time here. And the demo will be based all on the work that Monday Live and C4SP has been doing around interoperability or interoperable building blocks. That's what the demo part will be.
Yeah, the demo on the booth will basically be somewhat similar to the demo that we were talking about in the summit. Obviously,
Yes.
It's slightly different because the format's different, but that's the intent. And what I put up on the screen here is basically what the graphics is for the booth. Typically, you don't see graphics for a booth of a show that until you get there, but you're getting a little heads up. Oh,
Yeah.
There you go. So that's the booth. Thank you, Tracy. Various people of this group are going to be talking on the automated buildings track and other educational session tracks, so look out for them. And then the thing that I think Ken briefly mentioned is that we're going to have a new thing at AHR called the IBB workshop. It's going to be on Wednesday from 11 a.m. Didn't put that there, until 2 p.m. And the idea of this is, as the name suggests, is to be there and to present and have a working session with anybody that wants to learn more about the IBB after hearing all of the stuff, either at the summit or at the booth. So that's the concept there. And I know a lot of people will be heading home for by Wednesday, but that's fine. Understand that. So that's the whole agenda.
You'll be busy to communicate all that.
No, we'll all be busy. And remember, up there, it's a collaborative effort. So that's kind of got to the end of our this sort of formal discussion. David, I'm picking on you because are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, because you live in Chicago for no apparent reason. I'm going to pick on you. Do you want to sort of recap on what we've talked about and sort of your sort of observation? I think you're coming at this from a slightly different view for many of us because you're not really a core part of the HVAC industry per se.
Sure. Is there anything in particular you'd like me to add or contribute or speak to right now?
Just the discussion that we've had and the structure of this agenda as we've laid it out. Does it make sense to you?
I think there's a key why section or why theme that should go through this whole thing about, because it takes money to implement any of this and to change any building to utilize an IBB or move things to the cloud. And I think there needs to be a strong business case for the owners as a theme through all of this. And the owners are very unfortunate. I'm making huge unfair generalizations, but so much of the focus is, does this increase our net operating income? And why should I care when the value of this office asset just dropped 40% and I'm underwater? You know, there are a lot of key market trends that are going on in office and multifamily and retail. And the business case that's made for these things needs to take the current market challenges in mind, and the whys should be tailored to where we are right now and the business case for it.
Okay, but just what you're saying is make sure that that point is consistently made throughout in these different sessions, right?
There needs to be a why in every section. Why for the owners.
Good point.
I like that.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent.
Okay, so it's past 4 o'clock on the East Coast. Let us wrap. Thank you everyone for being here. Thanks to the panelists. Thanks Tristan for joining us. And we are going to, the plan is we'll sort of absorb all of these comments and this discussion, and we'll have another go at sort of refining it next week. Not exactly the same way as we're doing it this week, but exactly how we'll decide next Monday. But we want to make sure this is the right agenda for this discussion.
I think one of the big calls to action is go on the website and register also.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Do you have any pre-registration information yet? Is that something that you've tallied up?
Kind of, what do you mean?
How many people are pre-registered so far?
I think we're a few dozen last time I checked, which is probably about the same as we had last year.
At this,
at this point in time.
last year we sold out though at 100 and something, right?
Yeah, well, last year we ended up with 150, I would say, actually in the room. We may or may not get to that number, but I think we'll get to sort of 100-ish, which was the intent all along for this summit. Get 100 people, especially if there are 100 of the right people. You know, this group and the audience here, and people that actually will make that can potentially be part of this collaboration. So really looking forward to all of that.
Will you transfer some of this information onto the registration site?
Yes, probably after Wednesday, after our normal Wednesday planning chat. But yes, that's the intent.
Good to know,
Okay.
because I think that's a great resource, and it's a little thin right now when you go there, but this really, we made good progress today.
Yeah. So this is the site, and it actually has a lot of blurb about motivation and stuff, and then it goes into the agenda, which, as Ken said, is needs some descriptions, which is really what we've been working on. So great, let's wrap this. Thank you. Get a video up tomorrow-ish, and we'll see everyone next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.